Video set 2. Context. Managing social context manages team performance. During the 1990s, Korean Airlines was crashing jumbo jets at 17 times the industry average. It was so bad that the president of Korea would not fly on Korean Airlines. The cause was mysterious, as KAL trained and tested flight crews to the same standards as other airlines. Finally, a subsidiary of Boeing put observers into the KAL cockpits to watch what was happening. They found the cause was team social context. KAL had imported Confucianism from Korea's social society into their cockpits. When the captain was flying, the first officer tuned out. It was unacceptable to suggest the captain had made a mistake. In fact, all modern jets require two people piloting the airplane for safe flight. Typically, one of the pilots flies the airplane, while the other works the radio and manages the various subsystems. Note, a Korean network member emailed me and said the fact that almost all the pilots trained in the military with a strict chain of command hierarchy further exacerbated the problem. Interestingly, the same social context failure caused the most deadly aircraft accident in history. The captain, who was flying KLM 747s, was the most respected captain and lead trainer in the airline. Was flying this particular KLM 747. When he spooled up the engines for takeoff after a garbled communication with the tower, the first officer stopped them and he eased the throttles. When the same thing happened the second time, the first officer was too embarrassed to speak up again. The tower had in fact not provided takeoff clearance, and the KLM plane smashed into a stationary Pan Am 747 on the runway at Tenerife. I fly nearly 100,000 miles a year with United Airlines, a lot of it on big jets. Since we board early, there is plenty of time to go up and chat with the pilots in the cockpit, who always welcome me. The pilots invite me to call them by their first name and call me by mine. The atmosphere is friendly and informal. Airlines today train their pilots to maintain cockpit social contexts where, although the captain has the final say in any emergency, they work together as equals flying the aircraft. This is in marked contrast to the authoritative voice of the captain when he or she directs passengers to put on their seatbelts and sit down. Attention drives perception. This is the first of many workshop slides dealing with what I believe is the least reliable human function, perception. You're going to show a video to these people, to your workshop participants, and make sure you emphasize their task is to accurately count the number of times people wearing white shirts pass the basketball. Then show the selective awareness video. When the video ends, ask people to raise their hands if they saw anything unusual. The only difficulty with this video is that it has been around on YouTube and other places, and many people have seen it. I believe you can report that over 60% of first-time viewers failed to see the gorillas. I note there's also a later version of this experiment. In addition to the gorilla appearing, the curtain changes color and one participant leaves the group. Most people, confident and proud they saw the gorilla, failed to see either of these new changes. Draw an analogy between technical teams focusing on their technical work and them paying close attention to the passing of the basketball. Just as they did not see the gorilla, technical teams did not see flawed team social contexts that caused them to fail. The whole point of this is once we tell people about the gorillas, everybody easily sees them. Similarly, the workshop is about learning to see flawed team social contexts and use 4D processes to remedy them. Insufficient funding bites twice. I consider this an optional slide, and this story I'm going to tell is marked FYI for your information, which means you can use it or not as you see fit. Some years ago, a vice president in industry contacted me about a broken team leader. I began, as always, with a team development assessment, or TDA. The team benchmarked deep in the red bottom quintile. When I briefed the team report, I learned that the prior vice president had cut their already low proposal price in half. Now they were trying to build this complex system for about 1/4 of the money required. They received beatings from the customer and their management constantly, and morale was in the dumpster. I then performed an individual development assessment on IDA for the team leader. His score was okay. He was not the problem. The problem was the performance-limiting context. There is no solution to this other than acknowledging the unpleasant reality and then using the context-shifting worksheet to make a 4D communication with their customer. The fascinating thing about the chart is the relationship between failed and impaired missions and inadequate funding. When you underfund projects, you lose twice. First, you get inefficient and despondent teams with broken customer relationships. By the way, the customer in this case was a 3-letter agency like NSA, CIA, that kind of thing. And it secretly blacklisted, or another secret entity, and it blacklisted this company for future business because of this poor performance. Second, you get a high probability of failure or impairment in your product. Matching project financial assets with project technical requirements is necessary to avoid a flawed team social context. This chart has another fascinating result. Notice that the cost on the y-axis is logarithmic. Unfortunately, we cannot yet budget in logarithms of dollars. Cost goes like the complexity to the 6th power. I'm sure you already knew about this, as we watch every large project from airports to highways to tunnels overrun by multiple factors. Team social contexts act like fields. Context powerfully drives behaviors. We now leave sophisticated space missions and look at ordinary life. Would you behave differently when you were making or receiving a marriage proposal? When you were having dinner with your fiancé's family? When you were at your bachelor or bachelorette party? If you were hijacked during your honeymoon? Would you expect sanctions if you behaved inappropriately in any of these contexts? If you made an inappropriate remark at your fiancé's family dinner, would you get a kick under the table? If you were not partying hard enough at the bachelor or bachelorette party, would people pressure you to party harder or drink more? If you behaved inappropriately during a hijacking, would your life be at risk? We all sense context and adapt our behaviors as if guided by an invisible field. If you had a bar magnet in your hand or sitting on the table, could you feel the field of the bar magnet? Of course you could not. You might recall that early in life you sprinkled iron filings on a paper on top of a bar magnet and shook the paper. You could then see the outlines of the magnetic field. What kind of probe could be used to measure invisible team social contexts? We measure team social contexts by measuring team behavioral norms. Now the question is, which behavioral norms ensure high performance and low risk team social contexts? Managing social context manages technical performance. The book Training Ain't Performance, ASTD Press 2004, is a fascinating book about the power of team social contexts. They use the word environment for context. I placed a quote on the slide from their book because people often ask me about the effect of individual abilities on team performance. The research compiled in Training Ain't Performance shows this is not a driver in ultimate team success. Moreover, most technical teams we work with have members with first-rate technical educations and experience. This is not a limiting factor for the team. When I was speaking in Dubai some years ago, the event began by asking the participants about their emphasis on team versus individual development. I had to tell them this is a false choice. Unless you change individuals, you cannot change teams. The reality is that our processes are doing individual development using team social contexts to accelerate the process. This slide also shows topics that used to be workshop slides, which we removed to make the early part of the workshop move easily and swiftly. Participants can now read about these topics and how NASA builds teams, my book. Analyzing team and leader performance. When I became a professor of leadership at the business school at the University of Colorado in 1993, I wondered what I could offer the field that would be completely new. I recalled a saying from undergraduate physics: the right coordinate system can turn an impossible problem into two really hard ones. As a first step now, we need a simplifying coordinate system. You can read about the development of the 4D system and how NASA builds teams, starting with page 18 in the English language version of the book. It's basically a Jungian psychology-based system. The 4D system simplifies needs. The 4D system analyzes, which is a physics word for simplifies, the core human needs that high-performance teams and effective leaders meet into 4 dimensions. The green cultivating dimension addresses the universal human need of feeling appreciated by others. The yellow including dimension addresses our need to feel a sense of belonging. The blue visioning dimension addresses our need for realistic and hopeful futures. And the orange directing dimension addresses our needs for knowing what others expect of us and having the resources and capacity to succeed and take right action. Since we believe that addressing the 4 dimensions is both necessary and sufficient for both high-performance teams and effective leaders, we measure and manage 2 team behavioral norms in each. Behavioral norms and contexts. This slide geometrically connects the behavioral norms that we measure and manage with high-performance team contexts. For example, in the upper left, do you want a team context of mutual respect and enjoyable work? Do you believe people perform complex tasks more efficiently when they are enjoying what they're doing? Then you must express authentic appreciation for your teammates' contributions. Do you want a context of willing and energizing collaboration? Then you must address the interests you share with others. Do you want a context where people relate authentically with aligned and efficient action? Then you must appropriately include others. Do you want a context of high trustworthiness and efficiency? Then you must rigorously keep all your agreements. Do you want a context of sustained and effective creativity? Then you must express reality-based optimism. Do you want a context where solutions to problems appear magically? Then you must decide what you are 100% committed to and live your life accordingly. This alters perceptions to reveal solutions. Do you want a context focused on outcome without victims and blamers? Then you must resist blaming and complaining in yourself and others. Do you want a context of clear and achievable expectations? Then you must clarify yours and others' roles, accountability, and authority. Team benchmarking. Time-strapped teams particularly like our 15-minute online team development assessments, or TDAs. They like quantitative comparisons of their team performance with other peer teams. The image at the top of the chart is a histogram of 300 teams, mostly NASA project teams, first TDA scores organized by quintiles. Note, even though we have more than 700 teams in our database, we stopped updating the benchmarking baseline when we observed we're providing systemic organization-wide improvement throughout NASA. Continually updating the benchmarking data would constantly, quote, raise the bar. I like categorizing the team scores by quintile because I think this is a reasonable estimate of the precision of the measurement. Below the benchmarking curve on the left, you can see the team context of bottom scoring teams. As we researched these teams, we found that one or more structural managerial shortfalls limit these team scores and by inference performance. To more about these, what we call 7 deadly sins, go read page 242 and how NASA builds teams. I can tell you from personal experience that if we had performed a 4D team development assessment for Hubble's teams, the scores would have been in the bottom quintile, and that was the context that caused the mirror flaw. In contrast, the right-hand image shows the context of a top benchmarking team. I think it is rather obvious this would be a high-performance team with low risk of technical failure. Which team would you rather work in, and which team would you rather fund as their sponsor?